The writing concepts I learned this semester include the balanced literacy components in writing, the writing process stages, the writing workshop components, and the 6 traits of writing. There are 3 main sections in the balanced literacy components in writing, that being interactive writing, independent writing, and shared writing. Independent writing speaks for itself as the student works independently on a piece of writing. Interactive writing and shared writing are actually pretty similar as the teacher collaborates with the student on a certain piece of writing. However, during shared writing, the teacher actually holds the pen and acts as a scribe for the student so they can express their ideas without having to worry about the fundamentals of writing actual ideas on the paper. Versus interactive writing is whenever the student and the teacher both work on the piece of writing, but they share the pen so that they're both expressing their ideas. During my kindergarten field placement, I actually found out that shared writing was the best way to work with those students just because they do not know how to form sentences and put their ideas onto paper. So, shared writing, it was easier for the teacher to take those ideas and actually write it out for them. The writer's workshop is also divided into 3 key components, that being the mini lesson with the introduction, the writing time, and the sharing time. The mini lesson with the introduction should only last about 5 to 10 minutes, and it's covering material that's gained from what the teacher sees in the student's writing. It could be used to explore, review, model, or reinforce skills and or materials that are new or unfamiliar or um, a common struggle among all the students. Writing time is probably the most important part of the writer's workshop. It is whenever the student is able to write um, or work on the pieces that they have previously written, and they need to write the entire time with no breaks. And then finally, there's sharing time, which is when the students take turns sitting in the author's chair and basically present and share their writing. Sharing time is actually very important. I came to realize during this semester working with my student. Whenever we had the publishing party, she became very excited about presenting. She even wanted to present to my teacher. Um, and it just gave her a sense of pride in her writing, and she just felt accomplished. One of the most important writing concepts that I learned this semester that I actually had to go through with the student I was working with was the writing process. That is, whenever you start with the pre writing, which is the brainstorming and researching and gathering of ideas, the drafting, which is the organizing of their ideas on actual paper, revising, which is making structural changes, editing, which is making mechanical changes, sharing with your peers. That's actually a really important step in that process. It allows you to get feedback from your peers so that you can make some changes if need be. And then publishing, which was my favorite part during this whole process in my class this semester because we actually threw a publishing party for the student and she was able to share and show off her writing. All these steps in the writing process are super important because without one another, your piece wouldn't be complete. Again, without editing, then you can't have a publishing. Without drafting, then you can't share your piece. Um, and in my future classroom, whenever I do become a teacher, I plan to have maybe like a checklist on some butcher paper or just having the writing process stages somewhere visual so that my students can see and they can like kind of create a mental checklist in their mind whenever they're writing their own piece of paper to make sure that their writing is as best as it can be. And then lastly, the writing concept that we worked on was the 6 traits of writing. We really went into this during the writing process when we were working with our students to create their own piece of writing. It breaks down into ideas, word choice, voice, organization, sentence fluency, and conventions. Again, when we were working with our students and working on the writing process, we had to break down everything from the ideas, which was the main message and the piece of the writing, to the organization and how my student wanted to organize her piece, and then all the way to conventions whenever we revised, edited, worked on the punctuation, capitalization, and then grammar of her writing. All these traits would be super important to go over in a classroom setting just because, again, without each of these categories, the writing would not be a whole. Again, without the ideas, the student wouldn't have a piece. Without organization, the piece would not flow. sometimes during my writing and working on these traits with my student this semester, it was hard. For example, when we worked on word choice, it was hard for her to understand that there are different words that can mean the same thing. And it kind of was a chore for her to switch the words that she already had just because she liked the way it sounded. But when she finally did realize that there were other words that meant the same thing, she actually saw that it did flow better and it sounded better and it created an image in the audience's mind. I really enjoyed learning all these concepts in this classroom this semester, and I know that I'll definitely be able to use it in my future classroom and even the semesters after this.